this Sunday on Rosemary Barton Live.
We just had an election 6 months ago. We gave Mr. Carney a mandate to execute a plan. That plan is in the budget.
The Carney government faces a confidence test tomorrow with the vote on the federal budget. Chief Government Whip Mark Gerretsen is here on whether he thinks the minority Liberals survive or if Canadians are headed to a winter election. The Liberals need just 2 votes or 2 no-shows to survive, with the Conservatives and the Bloc Québécois against the budget. Just who gets behind it? We'll ask Green Party leader Elizabeth May on how she plans to vote.
The first principle of these projects is it's in the interests of Canada.
The Prime Minister announced another round of major projects meant to be fast-tracked and to boost an economy facing pressure right now. We'll talk to a Northern Ontario mayor on what being included in the major projects list means for the city. It all starts now on Rosemary Barton Live. Hey, thanks for joining us on this Sunday. Just hours away now from facing a confidence vote on his budget. It is still not clear that Prime Minister Mark Carney's government will survive it. For days, the PM has been trying to sell his plan as the best path for Canada's future. The Liberals know the margin between a vote to pass that budget and one to force another election is razor thin. Assuming every MP participates tomorrow, the Liberals need just 2 opposition MPs to vote with the minority government for the budget to ensure it passes, or 2 opposition MPs to abstain from voting. If that doesn't happen, Canadians could be heading to the polls in another election. Mark Gerretsen is the Chief Government Whip. Nice to see you this morning.
Thanks for having me, Rosie.
Based on the conversations that you've been having, Mr. Gerretsen, do you expect the budget to pass tomorrow?
Well, I can tell you that we have all of our votes that will be present in the House of Commons, but the reality of the situation is that this is a minority parliament. That's what Canadians elected 6 months ago. They elected a parliament that they're looking for parties to work across party line, and we will deliver our votes on Monday, just like we did on Thursday and Friday of the preceding week when we were in session.
So what are the conversations then that are happening? What kind of conversations are you having, or are you having any with opposition parties to try to get the support that you need, which is not a lot, to be fair?
Well, I mean, it's not for me to say what the conversations are that are going on. My job is the whip. My responsibility is to deliver our votes in the House of Commons. We had all 169 of our members vote on Thursday and Friday because, of course, one member is a speaker, which brings us to 170. And I plan to have all of those there again on Monday. Having said that, I mean, I think it's well documented that the Prime Minister has made outreach to all party leaders to try to listen to what they're looking for to be reflective in the budget. And I think what we're seeing in this budget is a transformational budget, and a budget that Canadians want at a time like this, a budget that builds up our national defense, a budget that initiates projects of a national scale, and one that increases our trade diversification in the context of the world that we live in now.
So I know you know how your people are going to vote, and that is your primary job, but are you telling me that you've no indication from the other parties how they plan to vote?
What I'm telling you is that that's not in my domain. My domain is, as the whip of the Liberal Party, is to deliver our votes. So I will make sure that all of our votes are there, and I leave it up to others to have those negotiations. But you know, I come back to the point that we were elected this Parliament just 6 months ago, and we were elected in this minority situation. This is what Canadians want right now. So there certainly is an appetite to work across party lines. From our side, we're continuing to do that, and we have delivered a budget that reflects what Canada needs right now in the context of what's going on in the world.
Are you prepared for an election if that's where we end up? Because mistakes happen, right, Mr. Gerretsen? I mean, things could happen where everyone thinks it's going to be okay, and then you end up in an election.
We're always ready for an election. The Liberal Party has been ready for an election since the last one. We don't want one. We also don't think that Canadians want a Christmas election. But we will certainly be prepared. We are always ready to go. And if it comes to that, then we will proceed to an election. Having said that, I'll reiterate what I said, which is that I don't believe Canadians want this, and what they want is for us to be working together. And I believe that this budget reflects that.
I'm just going to try and ask the same question a different way. I'm being very transparent about it. But what do you think is the likelihood that the government survives tomorrow? And I guess I would ask that based on, as you point out, those other two confidence votes that happened the previous week that you did survive. Does that give you some reassurance, I guess?
I'm not going to comment on the likelihood of it because I don't think it's my place to do that. What I will comment on is the fact that all of our members were there to vote, and they will be there on Monday to vote too. That's 169 votes, and we require 3 more. So I think what it really comes down to is, those members within the opposition parties and their reflections on this budget and the fact that it is a transformational budget that meets the moment that we're in right now.
On Friday, the finance minister asked opposition MPs, sort of reached out to them and said, you need to elevate yourself above politics for the budget vote, and asked them to do some soul searching. I mean, maybe, but this is a partisan environment, and I don't know whether it's possible to put politics aside on a budget vote that is, very, as you say, it is transformational is the word the Prime Minister uses and is very important. Do you think that's possible for people to put that aside in order to get to the outcome that you want, which is for it to go ahead?
I think it's what Canadians want, and I think it's what Canadians expect. And when Canadians elect a minority parliament, as they did only 6 months ago, they're effectively saying, we want you to work together across party lines. And so I think that those in the other parties have the opportunity to reflect on this and come to the conclusion that this really is a transformational budget, that Canadians aren't looking for a Christmas election, and what they want is Parliament to work together. The Prime Minister did meet with all leaders of the other political parties. There, in addition to the thousands of other touch points that went into the creation of this budget, and this budget genuinely reflects what Canada needs right now. So, I leave it to those that have to reflect on that and come to a conclusion on their own. And we're kind of already seeing that with the two breaks within the Conservative Party. People, members that are deciding this is a budget that they can support, which is why we've had one floor crossing and one individual who's chosen to step down from the Conservative Party.
Well, I'll end on that. Have you had any conversations with other opposition MPs about joining the Liberal caucus?
Listen, Rosie, we are a big tent party. We're always open to accepting new members. We're always open to having conversations with people who share the same values as us. And I think what we're seeing more and more now is that there are more progressive conservatives out there that just don't see their values reflected in the current Conservative Party led by Pierre Poilievre. And that's why we're seeing more and more people come to the reality that this is a good budget. It's a budget that meets the moment that Canada needs right now, and that's why they're choosing to vote for it.
Okay, Mark Gerretsen, we'll see what happens tomorrow. Thank you for your time, sir. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Conservatives and the Bloc Québécois have both slammed the Liberals' budget and are set to oppose it. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre was asked by reporters in Calgary on Friday if he's confident that all of his members of Parliament would vote against the budget. Poilievre would not directly answer.
So I just want to know, are you confident that all of your MPs will vote against the budget?
100% of our MPs oppose the costly Carney credit card budget that is going to drive up the cost of food, housing, and living for Canadians. What all Conservatives stand for is an affordable budget so Canadians can have an affordable life.
The spotlight will be on the NDP and the Green Party tomorrow. New Democrats on Budget Day earlier this month said that they were going to take some time to study the document. They were going to talk to Canadians in their ridings. Still not clear at this hour how they will vote or if they will, because they could have abstained. The NDP leader said on this program that abstaining from the vote is an option for some of their MPs. That's one way for the Liberals to avoid that snap election without outright support from an opposition party. The other way, the Green Party has one MP in Parliament and might end up being crucial in determining whether the government survives. And the leader of the Green Party, Elizabeth May, joins me in studio this morning. Good morning.
Good morning,
Appreciate
Rosie.
you being here.
Well, thank you.
You said on Budget Day there was no way the Green Party could support this budget, but that you were open to conversations. What conversations have you had? Are you still having them?
Many, and yes, I've had conversations, and the openness And I have a sense that there's some goodwill. François-Philippe Champagne, for example, in answer to a question on the last Friday we were in session, added to things that weren't in the budget, saying, yes, we are committed to our nature agenda and 30% by 30, but it's still not in the budget, so I've got a lot to weigh. We're still having a lot of conversations.
So is it fair to say you still don't know what you're going to do tomorrow?
It is honest and accurate to say I do not know what I'm going to do tomorrow.
What are the things that you're looking for? I know you obviously said that there weren't enough climate fighting measures in the budget, but what were some of the things that you said to the government and whoever you're talking to? These are the things that I'd like to see. Can you do them?
Well, it's not just that there aren't enough measures for climate. There isn't a commitment. The Paris Agreement isn't mentioned at all. And that was unfortunately also the case in the speech from the throne. So the signals aren't good. So when a new government comes in and cancels existing climate programming measures, doesn't add in new things to address the climate crisis, and so I want to hear clearly and preferably have the budget amended to say, now that gets tricky because tomorrow's the vote, but there's nothing here that says this government understands that we're in what we passed in Parliament when Catherine McKenna was minister. We're in a climate emergency. It was 2019. We're in a larger emergency 6 years later. And what are we going to do? There's also a real uncertainty around support for a number of things that have been promised in the past, like an adaptation strategy. There's a certain level of climate crisis we can no longer avoid, and we're not ready for it. 2024, we had $8.5 billion worth of insurable losses to climate events, and obviously more that weren't insurable. So and the measures for, what are we going to do about wildfires? This budget is quite inadequate.
The Prime Minister has spent a large part of his life also fighting climate change and being on the world stage talking about it. Do you question his commitment to that and his bona fides in that regard? Or?
Well, one has to. I believe in evidence. It's hard to imagine a human being with the intellectual capacity of the Prime Minister writing a book like Values, and 10 years ago, 2015, giving the speech that he gave to Lloyd's of London without understanding it and without being committed. But actions as a government are lacking. We're missing in action. We're not at COP30 this year. The government could have planned the budget.
Well, there are ministers there, to be fair.
No, he had to leave already to get back for the vote. So the critical period is this week starting, and neither minister can be there because they have to be here for the vote. That's unfortunate. It's not, and then so the signals aren't good. That's why I'm in the conversations I'm in, because deep down I believe it can't really be true. With the Liberals, you worry all the time that they're going to break their promises. With the Conservatives, if you care about climate, you're worried they're going to keep their promises. So as someone elected in this Parliament to at least make sure that a voice for climate action is not completely absent, I have to keep saying, look, I can't vote for this as is. I need to hear and see the commitment.
How do you weigh some of the other things that the government is doing now? Putting two projects, LNG projects, on a fast track, in discussions with the Alberta government for a memorandum of understanding that the Premier at least says would circumvent some regulations, may include some sort of language around a bitumen pipeline. How do you reconcile those actions with what you're looking for?
Well, Bill C-5, which we experienced in June with, as you'll remember, are absolutely record-breaking press through Parliament with less than 4 days from second reading to it's gone through and it's passed. Not properly studied, and what it said was we can break other laws if we decide a project is in the national interest. So you take these things together, and the new announcements for more climate-killing projects, for more fossil fuel subsidies, and yet I'm still open to giving my vote to confidence of the House because I know how much Canadians don't want another election right away. So I'm in a dilemma, obviously, and I'm still talking to ministers and representatives from the Prime Minister's office and others to see what could we do before tomorrow afternoon to affect my vote. Because right now, I'm a no.
Who else are you talking to? Are you talking to any other parties? Are you talking to the NDP to see what their plan is? Are you engaging at all?
Well, I talk to my friends who are NDP members of Parliament, but they're not in a position to say, we know what we're doing. I mean, they may know, but the sense is you've got 7 members of Parliament. Obviously, Heather McPherson in a run for leader is unlikely to vote confidence in this budget. But there may be some, and not just in the NDP, as we know, who may be suddenly unable to manage their remote voting app. No one knows.
I'll just end on this. Obviously, part of this budget is a response to the moment we're in, which is, a bit of an economic crisis, given that nothing's moving forward with Donald Trump. What would you say that this budget does that at least, and that it is important that these actions get dealt with, given what we're facing?
I think there's no question that Canadians want to give the benefit of the doubt to the Prime Minister, me included. I don't find the measures in this budget to be an appropriate way to protect Canadian sovereignty. The effort here with what they call the productivity super deduction is to attract foreign capital to Canada. We know the last time that happened when Stephen Harper got rid of the tax treatment of investor trusts. What you end up with in that case was a massive increase in foreign direct investment and a lack of Canadian productivity. When you invite foreign corporations into Canada to take our resources, rip them and ship them out, that doesn't contribute to productivity. It does attract more investors, but they're foreign investors and they buy up Canadian companies. So I'm not sure this is a Canada First budget. On the other hand, I have great empathy for the Prime Minister. It's one thing to say we're dealing with the White House the way we used to understand what that meant. So now we're dealing with an irrational actor. So you could take all the steps in the world to appease a rational actor and think you're making progress. That's not what we have on our hands right now.
You do have one more option, and that is to abstain. Would you consider doing that?
I consider things. I talk to my constituents, and I was in the riding talking to people all week. I don't feel that it certainly isn't my inclination. We don't have anything in parliamentary procedure that records an abstention, like a principled decision. You're just not there. And I don't think I was elected to fail to show up.
Right. Okay, so we'll see what happens tomorrow.
Yes.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate
Thank you.
it. So, lots to watch for tomorrow. Just how will the confidence vote play out? The Sunday Scrum is standing by. Brett Forrester, Catherine Levesque, and Rob Shaw will be here a little bit later to talk about what they think. But first,
the Major Projects Office is helping to build Canada smarter and quicker, fast-tracking infrastructure that we need to unlock our country's immense resources and potential. And in this way, we'll build our communities, grow new businesses, and create tens of thousands of new careers in sustainable industries.
there are now a dozen so-called nation-building projects that the Prime Minister is recommending for fast-track approval. More on the way. We'll talk to the Northwest Territories on the work it is doing to get the NWT on the next round of infrastructure projects. You're watching RBL. As we've been talking about, Prime Minister Mark Carney announced the second round of projects that he is referring for fast-track approval by the federal government's Major Projects Office. The projects, which are spread out across the country, include a transmission line, an LNG project in BC, a hydro project in Iqaluit, a critical mineral mines in Ontario, Quebec, and New Brunswick. The Northwest Territories is pitching its own projects to the federal government, among them a major highway and hydro expansion. The Territories projects weren't on the list so far. Doesn't mean they've gone unnoticed, though, by the federal government. For more on this, we've reached Caroline Wawzonek. She is the Territories Minister of Strategic Infrastructure, Energy and Supply Chains, also Minister of Finance and NWT's Deputy Premier. All the titles, basically, and she joins me now from Yellowknife. Nice to see you, Minister.
Good morning.
You're a very busy person, clearly, so thank you for making some time. Tell me a little bit about the projects that your government's been pitching to the federal government, not on these lists, but what have you suggested would make sense going forward?
Well, the Arctic Economic Security Corridor project actually was mentioned back in September. It was in, I think people are calling it the second tranche, but it's one of the projects of strategic infrastructure, strategic focus. So really all three of our projects, in our view, do meet that definition. And so my focus hasn't necessarily been whether we make the list that everyone gets very excited about, but it's about using the tools the federal government's put in place. So Major Projects Office, Canada Infrastructure Bank. We have the Arctic Economic Security Corridor. It's going to connect southern Canada to the Nunavut coast. So right now, if you look at a map, there is a lack of access to northern Canada. So 40% of Canada's landmass, and there's very little roads. We are not on a North American energy grid. And so all of the opportunity of the north is sitting inaccessible right now. So there's the road up to Nunavut. There's a second road project that would link up a forward operating base here in Inuvik or in Yellowknife up to Inuvik, where the next forward operating base is planned. And finally is hydroelectric. So right now, I think people don't realize we have a multitude of small disconnected electricity grids that operate all around the north. We're looking to get 70% of our population linked on one hydro grid. So they're transformational types of projects, and we are getting a lot of attention from the federal government, whether we're on the formal list or not.
I know that you've had some conversations with Don Farrell, the CEO of the Major Projects Office, as recently, I think, as last week. Can you give us a sense of where you think that conversation is going? Because I agree with you, all those projects that you talked about seem to be the kinds of things that Ottawa is looking for.
Yeah, it was a very positive conversation. And it focused on the Northwest Territories as a whole, and really the North as a whole, and how Canada can actually unlock as I said, 40% of its landmass. So we were looking at how do we move them forward strategically? What are the missing pieces for each one? What would be a chronology that we would be able to maximize operational capacity, maximize construction capacity? And, look, this federal government's talking about return on investment. What's the return on investment going to be? What kind of private investment might be interested? And so it was a pretty wide-ranging and intense conversation, and a very positive one.
Tell me how it works a little bit then. Are you essentially pitching things to the project office? Are they looking for projects that have mostly private investment? Like, what is the process a little bit that you're going through right now?
I mean, and it may be different for others. I do take note that some of the projects noticed were specific mine projects, but might have a very different profile from ours. Ours are projects that really, from our view, can actually bring us to a place where the advanced projects that we know exist, or early exploration projects that we know exist, can be better accessed, whether through a spur road of their own. We are going in, and really the three projects we have been talked about notionally for 30-some years. But we finally have an opportunity where it seems like the federal government is thinking strategically and long-term, and actually saying, okay, what are we going to do to move these things forward? We can't build them, one small piece at a time. And that's been the challenge in the north. You get a little bit of funding. You can put in one bridge on a transportation corridor. You can upgrade one part of a hydro system, but the systems remain disconnected. It's going to be significant investments. Well, and they're significant from our side. So what is a $3 billion road project for us is a significant investment for a small territory. But on the scale of a national project, that is not significant dollars on the scales of national projects, considering what's being looked at elsewhere. So when we're talking to the Major Projects Office, it's often what do we need to do to two things? Make sure we have the investment dollars ready when we're ready to get to a construction shovels and ground decision. but also what else can we do with the federal government along the way. So in terms of planning dollars, in terms of determining if there's opportunity for private investment, those are some of the linkages that we're seeing very helpful right now from the federal system. Canada Infrastructure Bank too has been there with us, and they've already got a loan portfolio in one project in the north, and we're looking for more.
Do you feel like the Major Projects Office is going to make a difference with some of those projects that have, as you point out, been around for decades?
I think they can, and both, again, them coupled with the Canada Infrastructure Bank. One of the changes that I'm hopeful to see from them is that rather than going to the federal government with a stage 4, class 4 estimate, so a very early stage estimate, high risk of going over from what that might be, and then saying, hey, please, will you give us a bit of money to get to the next stage, build a piece of it. We need the federal government with us involved early on, looking at the fact that these are national scale in terms of what we are looking to achieve and accomplish and really accomplish for all of Canada. We want them there with us at the beginning to say, okay, how do we design this in a way that becomes an economy of scale for construction? So, from the planning all the way to the end goal, we want it to have the federal government involved earlier on in terms of stacking up that funding. For our projects, they have significant Indigenous government involvement, and Indigenous governments are looking to be equity owners. But I can't tell them the return on investment if I don't know what the federal government's prepared to come to the table with sooner.
Just a quick last question. Premier Simpson obviously will be on that First Minister's meeting call tomorrow with the Prime Minister. What are you guys hoping to hear? Anything about the conversations with the United States in particular, or what is the goal of that call from your perspective?
Well, I think part of it really it's maintaining the strategic focus, and for us, the strategic focus on the north. So obviously we have a southern border with an administration that is engaged in a trade war. But when we look at a map, we look at the northern side of the border, and there are some pretty serious geopolitical concerns, I think, right now. And so this is where we want to say, what are we doing and what will we be doing to make sure that we are linking South Canada to North Canada and unlocking Northern Canada so that we can actually convoy a military so that our citizens and residents have the ability to feel like a part of the sovereign country and have access to clean power and transportation corridors that they don't right now. So the projects are there. We're having these conversations already, and we need to make sure that the federal government's sitting down with us and planning it out and scoping it out from day one.
Minister Caroline Wawzonek, thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it. Nice to speak with you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
The Liberals have been selling their budget plan all week as a way to secure much-needed support for the confidence vote tomorrow.
I think we've answered the call of Canadians to present a budget that would make strategic investments to grow the economy, protect our communities, and give the means to our armed forces. So, like I said, I think there must be a number of colleagues who will do a bit of soul-searching over the weekend.
So what is the government doing to shore up support ahead of a decisive budget vote? Will they get enough votes to make it past? Our Sunday Scrum is standing by. We'll be right back.
The budget makes responsible choices to right-size government, not least so we can protect the essential social programs that give every Canadian a fair chance to get ahead.
Canadians cannot afford the cost of carny, but the good news is Conservatives will continue to fight for affordable budgets, so Canadians get affordable food, affordable homes, affordable families, and affordable lives.
After clearing 2 confidence votes already, the federal budget faces the final test tomorrow evening. How real is the risk that this budget could plunge Canada into another election? Let's bring in our Sunday Scrum. Brett Forrester, a reporter for CBC Indigenous in Ottawa. Catherine Levesque, a parliamentary reporter for the National Post. Rob Shaw is a political correspondent for Czech News, and he's in Victoria. Okay, this is what I'm going to call the speculative scrum, because we are just going to speculate based on things we know and evidence. But Catherine, I'll start with you. Where do you think this is going to land tomorrow? Obviously, there have been attempts to talk to people, and Liz May telling me today that she's still talking to people today inside the Prime Minister's office. Where do you think we're headed?
I'm really not holding my breath for an election, starting tomorrow. I think, yes, there are discussions ongoing, but there haven't been a lot of negotiations. I think what we've seen is, this Mark Carney's government is almost daring opposition parties to vote against this budget and saying, well, perfect, if you want to defeat us, we'll go into an election. But clearly, no one wants that. So, the Liberals have already said that they were all going to be there. The Bloc Québécois is also voting against, and they've also said that all their 22 MPs are going to be in the House of Commons tomorrow. So I think all eyes will really be on the New Democrats, which, again, just this morning, I asked them, they still haven't come to a decision. But also the Conservatives. I think Pierre Poilievre wouldn't say if all his MPs would be in the House. And I think what we saw from, is that he is not ready for an election right away. He has his confidence vote, his leadership vote, rather, in January. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw, maybe a few Conservative MPs simply not being there during the vote.
Yeah, Rob, you're not in the bubble here with us, so maybe you have a different perspective. Certainly, it's not something everybody's talking about, but I will say a lot of people are asking me, oh my gosh, could this really happen tomorrow? I mean, obviously anything is possible, but what are you feeling and hearing out there?
It feels like the biggest game of political nerd chicken possible. Everyone's sort of bluffing right up to the last minute here. The federal NDP leadership candidates are here in Victoria because it's the BC NDP convention, and nobody's talking about an election tomorrow. The federal NDP does not want that. They're dead broke. You've got 7 MPs who could either, maybe a couple of them flip, maybe they abstain. We're looking at a lot of people abstaining, I think. That seems like the most. If you can get 4, somebody's got a medical appointment, they just can't reschedule, somebody doesn't show up, maybe Elizabeth May does get what she needs to provide that vote, and then you have Conservative MP Matt Genereux, who doesn't look like he may be voting, didn't vote in the confidence amendments last week, and then you sort of end up with an abstention somewhere and this thing goes away. But I echo what Catherine said. Well, this is kind of like an interesting observation on a Carney government pretending it has a majority, tables a budget. Its obligation is to find those votes as a minority government. And instead of negotiating, offering compromise, and making amendments, they just the Prime Minister's talking about his next travel trip overseas. And it really is a pretend majority posture by the Carney government.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That I don't see, Brett, even a few weeks back when the budget was tabled, a couple weeks back, I guess, there wasn't really a sense from the government that they were going to try and seek the confidence, right? Like they were just, this is what we have, take it or leave it kind of thing, which is an interesting approach. And maybe they know that because it's so early on in the mandate, it's unlikely we'll end up in an election, but it does send a signal about how Mark Carney is governing. That's for sure.
I agree. It's interesting to see how some of these debates have played out. It almost feels like a 50-50 chance right now. Everybody keeps suggesting the budget will pass, but there's absolutely no evidence to indicate that the budget will pass and that the government has the votes it needs. It is kind of like this game of political chicken where everybody keeps saying nobody wants to have an election right now, yet all of them actually do kind of have a reason to roll the dice and have an election right now. If you're the NDP, you were decimated in the previous election precisely because you supported so many Liberal budgets in a row. So what more can you lose? by opposing this one. For the Conservatives, maybe you're looking at the lay of the land politically and saying, well, the Trump crisis is less acute, the Carney honeymoon period has started to subside, so they too have a reason to go to an election. And likewise for the Liberals, I mean, a majority government is probably on Mark Carney's Christmas wish list right now, as much as nobody wants to have an election. So I agree with Catherine that the NDP is really going to be important here. I remember I spoke with MP Laurie Idlout outside the House of Commons after the budget was passed, and I asked her how she was going to vote, and she said she just wasn't sure. She needs to consult with her constituents because she's really in a bind through this budget. On one hand, there's support for the university, Inuit Nunangat University. There's this project that was just fast-tracked in her riding, plus there's $1 billion infrastructure fund for the Arctic in the budget. So these are all things that she would be asked to vote for. So I think the budget really targets some of these individual MPs, some of these individual ridings, and it's almost being used as a wedge for some of the opposition parties to divide MPs from the rest of the group. So I think the ground is being laid for this to pass through abstentions. I agree.
Yeah. I think you're dead on there in terms of targeting ridings, and certainly because MPs were back in their ridings last week, they would have got a sense of what people were saying about it and what made sense for them. Is there, Catherine, though, to Brett's point, an advantage for some of the parties to say, well, maybe we will roll the dice, maybe things could improve for us here?
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly the NDP could make some gains. I think, Canadians are seeing more and more that Mark Carney is acting like a progressive Conservative Prime Minister, so this could certainly work in the NDP's favor. I will also note that, even though I don't think Pierre Poilievre wants an election, like the Conservatives' numbers are pretty good right now. I mean, they are just a few points behind in terms of the polls behind the Liberals. So, they could possibly aspire to a government. However, this is a big gamble. If Mr. Poilievre goes into an election and fails once again to form government, I mean, he's finished. So I think that it may be too much of a gamble, I think, for the Conservatives right now. And I think that's why, I'm not holding my breath tomorrow. But, I'll just finish by also saying that usually when there's big speculation of an election, I mean, usually there's some stuff going on. There's some buses being reserved, some planes. These things have not been happening. So, and I mean, Prime Minister Carney is going on a trip the next day. So really, I really do not foresee an election happening.
Yeah, I will say you're right that the Conservatives and Liberals are very tight in the polls, but Mr. Poilievre's numbers remain very poor compared to Mr. Carney's numbers in terms of who would be best Prime Minister. I don't know if that's part of the calculus there as they try to improve people's impression of Mr. Poilievre, but abstaining is one thing, but you can vote virtually, Rob. So I do wonder how people explain that they didn't vote for this, or if they get in trouble from constituents that they abstain, or I don't know how that kind of thing resonates, whether people are actually paying that close attention to things.
I don't think they are, but I'll go back to the federal NDP here, where look, in British Columbia, they got whacked pretty hard. They lost some ridings that they didn't think they were going to lose. They lost their leader. At the BC NDP convention right now, there are multiple resolutions on the floor to de-link the federal party membership with the provincial party membership, because the federal NDP does not align with the provincial NDP, which is fairly popular, and the natural resource development and the things that are being promoted here. So look, the NDP federally have a lot to lose. They could lose more than the 7 seats that they have won. They should not be going into a federal election $26 million in debt, out of alignment with British Columbia voters. That's why I think you'll see possibly the movement coming from the federal NDP.
Last word to you, Brett.
Well, I think it's perhaps worth remembering that what we're voting on, what MPs are voting on tomorrow, is basically a 10-word motion to approve the government's budgetary policy in general. So once that gets over the hurdle, perhaps there's some room to make some backroom deals for MPs to try to get things into the budget bill that's eventually going to have to be introduced and passed. Elizabeth May saying sort of, right now I'm a no, but maybe she can get some assurances at the last minute that some things she wants will be in the legislation. So it's not that hard to bite your tongue and support the motion when you can really take a hard line and fight against the legislation that's coming forward.
Okay, so I won't bring my suitcase down from the attic at this point, is what you're all saying. I'll hold you you all to it. No, I won't. Brett Forrester.
Timestamp it now.
Okay. Brett Forrester, Catherine Levesque, Rob Shaw. Nice to see you all. Very much appreciate it.
Thanks.
Okay, bye-bye. Prime Minister Carney has chosen a proposed nickel mine in Northern Ontario as one of the projects he is referring to the Major Projects Office for fast-tracking.
Crawford will anchor Canada's global leadership in clean industrial materials. It is situated in the world's second largest nickel reserve. It'll produce high-quality, low-carbon nickel, essential for batteries and green steel.
So what does this mean for the surrounding area, the communities, First Nations communities? Timmins, for instance, we'll hear from the Mayor of Timmins, a city located just outside of the Crawford project. For more on that, that's next. The Liberal government has chosen a half dozen more projects for the Major Projects Office to fast-track them. Some of those projects focus on the extraction and development of critical minerals, including the Crawford Nickel project that is integral to making batteries and steel.
There's a whole additional set of tools that the government can bring to bear, with our G7 allies, to help lock in the deal. There's a number of existing funding envelopes that we were looking at pursuing over the next 12 months to be in a position to have shovels in the ground by the end of next year. Again, having this referral to the MPO puts us in the express lane in terms of, being able to access some of those existing envelopes.
The proposed open pit mine would be located here, just outside the Northern Ontario city of Timmins. The project is expected to create thousands of jobs for residents there. Michelle Boileau is the mayor of Timmins, and she joins us now. Nice to see you, Mayor.
Nice to see you, too.
So the Crawford nickel mine and processing plants will be near your city. They are now being referred to the Major Projects Office. What does that mean for Timmins?
Well, for one, it it gives us a sense of reassurance that this project will be able to continue moving forward at an accelerated speed, and it has been already. But for us, it just gives us that promise that it will get the support that it needs to get going, because we've been very supportive of the Crawford project, Canada Nickel's Crawford project, for quite a while now. And so, this just means that, we're hoping that we'll be able to further collaborate with higher levels of government on infrastructure needs here in the area to be able to support their activities.
And I know obviously it's going to create thousands of jobs, but it's also going to do that at a time when I know that there's another mine that is closing, the Kidd Creek mine, at the end of 2026. Correct me if I'm wrong. So what does that mean in terms of knowing the fact that there'll be more jobs coming online?
Well, exactly, and that's why in my previous response, I spoke to the fact that it's reassuring to know that it will be accelerated through the various processes, because we have been seeing that that timeline with one of the other mines closing, and so there's this closure that's imminent, and we've been doing everything we can to prepare for that, and trying to make sure that there will be other activity going on to be able to pick up some of the workforce that will be ending there. And so, of course, this presents an opportunity to be able to pick up some of that workforce. And again, for our supply and service sector as well, a lot of our suppliers, have been working tirelessly to try to find some alternate contracts as well. So this is very promising for the area. And we know that it's just the first of much more that will come. So this is just a catalyst for much more development. So we're all quite excited over here.
I know that in March, Canada Nickel, the company behind it, did reach agreements with 3 First Nations, but there had been, it did take some work to get there. The Matagami First Nation raised concerns over boom towns that can result when you create mines like this. So I wonder, how much dialogue did you have with First Nations around reassuring them or getting to a place where those communities were also on board?
Yeah, quite honestly, this has been an exemplary process. Canada Nickel has been very proactive in engaging all stakeholders from the very onset. And as I said, we've been working with them for years now. We've been included on various committees, socioeconomic impact committee, environmental impact committees, et cetera. And so I know I've been sitting at some of those tables, and I've been sitting there with First Nation leadership from the region as well. And so, I've been quite impressed with the level of engagement, the relationship building that's been happening, and at various points along the way. And I've had an opportunity to discuss this with First Nation chiefs in the area, because of course, just myself, it's something, building relationships with Indigenous partners, you have to be very intentional about, and that's something that we've been doing here at the City of Timmins, and I know that Canada Nickel has been doing it as well, and they've been very open to some of the feedback that's been coming from local communities about some of the environmental things, and putting mitigating measures in place based on the input that they received from the ground. So when you see that in a relationship, it's always very encouraging to be able to keep working together.
Well, you mentioned the environmental piece. They did have their own assessment filing that said that the mine is anticipated to result in, this is a quote here, the unavoidable harmful alteration, disruption, or destruction of 147 hectares of fish habitat. Does that concern you at all? I mean, obviously there's a benefit. There's always a trade-off when you do this kind of resource development. But obviously there are some people who feel like this might not be worth it. What do you say to them?
And understandably so. I mean, I myself, I have called myself a bit of an environmentalist, and I always wondered how I would reconcile being the mayor of a mining city, with those values. And when you get to know how mining is done these days, and a lot of the advancements in technology, and they've really changed. Practices have changed in a way that we're able to mitigate a lot of those kind of impacts. But that's the point to impact assessment process, is to be able to identify what some of these potential impacts will be, and to be able to put those mitigating measures in place. So, I've seen a lot of examples with other big mining operations in the area where they're able to do some pretty innovative things to not only only mitigate the impact, but in fact, in some instances, you see improvements in the environment. And so, I've seen what their environmental plans are in terms of, water treatment. Any water that, it touches the mine site will end up being treated and returned to its original source. And in some cases, even in better quality. They have plans in place in terms of, fish species. And again, because the engagement has been so proactive, and we've been involved all along the way. We, locally, we are aware of these concerns that have been identified. We've heard what the plans are, and based on past experiences, personally, and the city of Timmins, we're feeling quite confident that they will be able to do this in a very sustainable manner.
I'll just end on this. I mean, it sounds like there's been a lot of engagement with the company. The company's done a lot of work, as have you and others. So what does it matter that it has now been referred to the Major Projects Office? If this was going ahead anyway and seemed to be going pretty well, why does that matter in any way?
Well, so it was going through the permitting process. But again, there's, could always go quicker in a sense. But I think the attention it brings to this operation will be beneficial. Of course, there's still a lot needed to be able to support this operation, to really get it going in terms of building infrastructure. And so, we are hoping that with this referral, we'll find some more active participation from other stakeholders.
Okay. Yeah. Michelle Boileau, thank you for making the time. Really appreciate it today.
Thank you for having me.
That budget vote, dramatic budget vote, is expected at 6:45 p.m. Eastern tomorrow, so tune in to Power and Politics and CBC News Network to see how it all turns out. I'm Rosemary Barton. Thanks so much for watching. See you back here next Sunday, if not before.